She bought an ice cream for a boy who seemed poor without knowing that his father was a millionaire. The next day, two unknown, well-dressed men showed up with an unexpected proposal. What seemed like a simple act of kindness put her at the center of a surprising turn of events, and her life would never be the same after that. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like this video and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The summer heat bore down mercilessly on Central Park West as Sarah Martinez hurried through her lunch break, her sensible heels clicking against the concrete. At 28, she was the kind of person who measured success not in dollars but in smiles, a quality that made her an excellent social worker at the local community center, even if it left her bank account perpetually wanting. The ice cream. Vendor's bell chimed through the humid air, drawing her attention to a small figure standing before the cart. The boy couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, his worn sneakers scuffing against the pavement as he watched other children happily licking their treats. There was something in his eyes, a quiet longing that seemed out of place on such a young face. Sarah's hand instinctively went to her purse. She had exactly $15 to last until payday, but something about the boy's expression tugged at her heart. Without hesitation, she approached the cart. 2 ice cream cones, please, she said, smiling at the vendor. 1 vanilla and... She turned to the boy, whose eyes had widened in surprise. What's your favorite flavor? Chocolate, he stammered, looking up at her with a mixture of confusion and hope. And 1 chocolate, she confirmed, handing over the money. The boy accepted the ice cream cone with trembling hands. Thank you, he whispered, his voice barely audible above the park's ambient noise. I'm Tommy. Nice to meet you, Tommy. I'm Sarah. She sat down on a nearby bench, patting the space beside her. Would you like to join me? Tommy nodded, carefully settling beside her. His clothes, Sarah noticed, were of excellent quality, designer brands she could never afford, but there was a loneliness in his bearing that spoke volumes. Do you come to the park often? She asked, watching as he methodically worked his way around the cone. Sometimes with Mrs. Reynolds, he replied. She's my nanny. She's talking to her boyfriend on the phone right now. He pointed to a well-dressed woman some distance away, engrossed in her mobile conversation. Ah, Sarah nodded, understanding dawning. And your parents? Dad's always working. Mum's at her yoga retreat. Again. The matter-of-fact way he delivered this information made Sarah's heart ache. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying their ice cream and watching the parade of people passing by. Tommy seemed to relax gradually, his shoulders losing their tension. You know what I like about ice cream? Sarah said finally, examining her cone thoughtfully. It's like a little moment of happiness you can hold in your hand. Sometimes that's all we need. Just a moment to make everything better. Tommy looked at her with an expression far too serious for his age. Dad says time is money. Well, Sarah smiled, I think time is worth more than money when you spend it with someone who makes you smile. A small grin tugged at the corners of Tommy's mouth, the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his entire face, making him look like the child he was supposed to be. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by Mrs. Reynolds' sharp call. Thomas Harrison, where are you? Tommy jumped up, nearly dropping what remained of his cone. I have to go, he said hurriedly. Thank you for the ice cream, Miss Sarah. As she watched him rush away, Sarah couldn't help but wonder about the last name he'd inadvertently revealed. Harrison. It tickled something in her memory, but she couldn't quite place it. Shrugging it off, she gathered her things, realizing she was already late returning to work. What Sarah didn't notice was the sleek black car parked across the street, or the tinted window that rolled down just enough to capture her image on a high-end camera. She didn't see the driver make a phone call, speaking in hushed tones about the woman who'd shown kindness to the young Harrison heir. And she certainly couldn't have known that her simple act of buying ice cream for a lonely little boy was about to catalyze a chain of events that would transform not only her life, but the lives of some of New York's most powerful people. As she hurried back to her modest office at the community center, the wheels of fate were already turning, set in motion by nothing more than a chocolate ice cream cone and a moment of compassion. The following morning dawned with the usual chaos of Sarah's cramped apartment in Queens. Her younger sister, Lisa, was burning toast again, filling their tiny kitchen with smoke and the acrid smell of carbonized bread. One of these days, Sarah called out, trying to simultaneously fix her hair and locate her missing shoe. "You're going to have to learn how to cook something without setting off the smoke detector." "That's what takeout is for," Lisa replied cheerfully, waving a dish towel under the beeping detector. At 23, she was studying nursing while working part-time at a local diner, her eternal optimism a perfect counterpoint to Sarah's practical nature. Sarah finally emerged from her bedroom, professionally dressed, but already feeling wilted in the summer heat. Their ancient air conditioner wheezed pathetically, doing little more than circulating warm air around the apartment. "You got another letter from the student loan people," Lisa said, gesturing to an ominous-looking envelope on their scratched coffee table. Sarah sighed, stuffing the unopened letter into her bag, another reminder of the mountain of debt she'd accumulated putting herself through social work school. "I'll deal with it later." The community center where Sarah worked was a testament to urban decay, a once grand building now held together by determination and emergency funding. She loved it all the same, especially the children who filled its halls with laughter despite their circumstances. She was in the middle of organizing an afternoon activities session when Marina, the center's elderly receptionist, appeared at her door with an unusual expression. "Sarah, dear," Marina said, her voice trembling slightly, "there are some gentlemen here to see you. They're waiting in the conference room." "Gentlemen?" Sarah frowned. "From the funding board." Marina shook her head. "They're from Harrison Global Enterprises." The name hit Sarah like a physical force. Now she remembered why Tommy's surname had seemed familiar. Alexander Harrison was one of the most powerful businessmen in New York, his face regularly splashed across financial magazines and news programs. The conference room, with its water-stained ceiling tiles and mismatched chairs, seemed especially shabby in the presence of the two impeccably dressed men who stood when she entered. Miss Martinez, the taller of the two, stepped forward. "I'm James Chen, head of security for Harrison Global. This is Michael Torres, Mr. Harrison's personal assistant. We'd like to discuss an opportunity with you." Sarah's mind raced. Had something happened to Tommy? Was she in some kind of trouble for buying him ice cream? "Mr. Harrison was quite impressed by your interaction with his son yesterday," Torres said, his tone carefully neutral. "He would like to meet with you personally this afternoon." "Meet with me?" Sarah's voice came out higher than intended. "I don't understand." "I just bought the boy an ice cream cone." Chen's expression softened slightly. Sometimes the smallest gestures reveal the most about a person's character. "Miss Martinez, Mr. Harrison is particularly interested in discussing your work here at the community center." Sarah glanced around the room at the faded motivational posters and the stack of donation request letters she'd been preparing to send out. The center was struggling. They all knew it. They needed major funding to keep their programs running. "What time this afternoon?" she heard herself asking. 2:00, Torres replied, sliding a business card across the table. The Harrison Global logo gleamed in gold embossing. "A car will pick you up here. Mr. Harrison appreciates punctuality." After they left, Sarah stood alone in the conference room, the business card heavy in her hand. Through the window, she could see children playing in the center's small playground, their laughter floating up to her like bubbles in the summer air. She pulled out her phone to text Lisa. "You'll never believe what just happened." The response came immediately. "Did you win the lottery? Please tell me you won the lottery. The refrigerator's making that noise again." Sarah smiled despite her nerves. Not exactly, but maybe something even more unlikely. She spent the rest of the morning trying to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting to the upcoming meeting. What could Alexander Harrison possibly want with her? The man was known for his ruthless business acumen, his luxury real estate developments, reshaping the city's skyline. He moved in circles so far removed from her world that they might as well have been different planets. As the afternoon approached, Sarah found herself standing in the center's tiny bathroom, attempting to make herself presentable. The woman, who stared back at her from the spotted mirror, looked both terrified and determined, a combination she'd worn often in her life, facing challenges that seemed insurmountable. "Remember who you are," she whispered to her reflection, smoothing down her simple black dress. "Remember why you do what you do." At exactly 1:45 p.m., a sleek black car pulled up outside the community center. The same car, though Sarah didn't know it, that had observed her in the park the day before. As she settled into the soft leather seat, her heart pounding beneath her carefully composed exterior, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was crossing a threshold, one that would forever divide her life into before and after. The Harrison Global headquarters pierced the Manhattan skyline like a silver blade, its glass surfaces reflecting the afternoon sun. As the elevator whispered past floor after floor of corporate opulence, Sarah's stomach did somersaults. Floor 58, 59, 60. The doors opened directly into a reception area larger than her entire apartment. A striking woman in her early 40s looked up from behind a curved desk. "Miss Martinez, Mr. Harrison is expecting you." She led Sarah through double doors into an office that seemed to float above New York City. Alexander Harrison stood with his back to the door, hands clasped behind him as he gazed out at his empire. At 45, he cut an impressive figure, tall and athletic, with silver threading through his dark hair in a way that spoke of distinction rather than age. When he turned, Sarah was struck by how much Tommy resembled him, right down to the serious set of their mouths. "Miss Martinez." His voice was deeper than she expected, with a warmth that surprised her. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." He gestured to a seating area where floor-to-ceiling windows met polished mahogany. "Please sit." Sarah perched on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than her yearly salary, while Harrison settled across from her with casual grace. A woman appeared silently with a silver tea service, then vanished just as quietly. "Sugar?" Harrison asked, reaching for the delicate cups. "No, thank you." Sarah's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Mr. Harrison, I have to admit I'm confused about why I'm here." He smiled slightly, and for a moment she caught a glimpse of what he must have looked like when he was younger, before success and responsibility had carved their permanent lines around his eyes. "My son spoke about you for hours last night. Do you know how rare that is?" Sarah remained silent, sensing there was more. "Tommy doesn't talk much anymore. Not since his mother and I separated 2 years ago." Harrison's fingers tapped against his cup. "But last night he told me about the lady who bought him ice cream, who talked to him about happiness and time and worth." His keen eyes studied her. "You work at the Riverside Community Center?" "Yes." Sarah straightened slightly. "I'm a social worker there. We provide after-school programs, counseling services, and community support for families in need." "And how long have you been there?" 4 years, since I finished my master's degree." Harrison nodded as if confirming something to himself. "I've been looking into your work, Miss Martinez. Your colleagues speak highly of you. The children trust you. You've implemented several successful programs despite severe budget constraints." Sarah's mind raced. Was this about funding for the center? Hope bloomed in her chest. "I have a proposition for you," Harrison continued, setting down his cup. "I'm launching a new initiative, the Harrison Foundation for Children's Welfare. It's something I've been considering for some time, but I've been waiting for the right person to lead it." The hope in Sarah's chest froze. Surely he couldn't mean, "But I want you to be its executive director." The words hung in the air between them. Sarah's teacup clinked slightly as she set it down with trembling hands. "Mr. Harrison, I'm flattered, but I'm not qualified to run a foundation. I'm a social worker, not a business executive." He smiled. "That's exactly why I want you. This foundation needs someone who understands the real needs of communities, not just spreadsheets and profit margins." He stood, walking to his desk and returning with a thick folder. "The foundation will have an initial endowment of $50 million. You'll have a team of experienced administrators to handle the business side. What I need is someone with vision, compassion, and integrity to guide its mission." Sarah's mind spun with the possibilities. The kind of resources he was talking about could help so many people, transform so many lives, but why me because I bought your son an ice cream? Harrison's expression grew serious. Because in a world where everyone wants something from me or my son, you gave him something expecting nothing in return. Because you saw him, not as the Harrison heir, but as a child who needed a moment of kindness. He paused, and because I've learned that the best way to judge someone's character is to watch what they do when they think no one is looking. Before Sarah could respond, the office door opened. A woman entered, her Louboutin heels clicking against the marble floor. Even if Sarah hadn't recognized her from society pages and charity gala photos, she would have known who she was. Tommy's mother, Victoria Harrison. Victoria's perfectly made-up face registered surprise, then something else, calculation. Alex, darling, I didn't know you had a meeting. I was just dropping off the papers for Tommy's summer camp. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Harrison's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. Victoria, this is Sarah Martinez. She's going to be running the new foundation. Victoria's eyes swept over Sarah's modest dress and sensible shoes. Her red lips curved into what might have been a smile. How interesting. I wasn't aware the foundation was moving forward. She turned to Harrison. We should discuss this, Alex. Over dinner, perhaps. The tension in the room was palpable. Sarah stood gathering her purse. Mr. Harrison, thank you for the opportunity. May I have some time to think about it? Harrison nodded, relief flickering across his features. Of course. Take the weekend. We can meet again on Monday to discuss details. As Sarah made her way to the door, Victoria's voice stopped her. Miss Martinez, thank you for being so kind to my son yesterday. It's so rare to find genuine people these days. The words were perfect, but something in the tone made Sarah's skin prickle. In the elevator, Sarah leaned against the wall, her heart racing. The job offer was incredible, a chance to make real change, to help children on a scale she'd never imagined possible. But Victoria's appearance had revealed something else. She was about to step into a world of complex relationships and unspoken tensions, where nothing was as simple as it seemed. The weekend crawled by in a blur of anxiety and excitement. Sarah's tiny apartment became a war room of pros and cons lists, with Lisa enthusiastically adding her own commentary to every consideration. Are you kidding me? Lisa exclaimed for the 100th time, pacing their small living room. $50 million? Do you know how many kids you could help with that kind of money? How many programs you could create? Sarah sat cross-legged on their worn couch, staring at her lists. It's not that simple, Lisa. I don't know anything about running a foundation. What if I mess it up? What if I let everyone down? Then you learn, Lisa said firmly. You've been helping people with basically no resources for years. Imagine what you could do with actual support. But it wasn't just the responsibility weighing on Sarah's mind. She couldn't shake the memory of Victoria Harrison's calculating gaze or the sudden tension that had filled that pristine office. There were currents moving beneath the surface that she didn't understand. Monday morning arrived with unexpected speed. Sarah chose her outfit carefully, a navy blue dress she'd bought for job interviews paired with her one good pair of heels. She was about to leave when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Coffee before your meeting. Victoria Harrison. Sarah's finger hovered over the phone. How had Victoria gotten her number? More importantly, why did she want to meet? After a moment's hesitation, she replied with a simple yes. The cafe Victoria had chosen was the kind of place Sarah usually hurried past, where a single pastry cost as much as her weekly grocery budget. Victoria was already there, looking effortlessly elegant in cream-colored silk. Sarah, darling, Victoria air-kissed her cheeks, as if they were old friends. I'm so glad you could join me. Please, sit. A waiter appeared instantly with Victoria's apparent usual order, a skinny latte with an extra shot. Sarah ordered plain coffee, trying not to wince at the price. I wanted to talk to you woman to woman, Victoria began, stirring her latte with precise movements. About the foundation position. I haven't accepted yet, Sarah said carefully. Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. "Smart girl, you need to understand what you're walking into." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Alex is complicated. He has this pattern, you see. Finding diamonds in the rough, he calls it. People he thinks he can mold into something greater, but eventually they disappoint him, or he loses interest, and they're discarded." Sarah's coffee turned bitter in her mouth. "Is that what you think this is?" "I think," Victoria said delicately, "that you seem like a genuine person, and genuine people often get hurt in our world. The foundation position. It's not just about helping children, it's about politics, power, and appearances. One wrong move, one social faux pas, and you'll find yourself frozen out faster than you can blink." "Are you trying to warn me off?" Victoria's laugh was musical but held no warmth. "I'm trying to help you understand the reality. You caught Alex's attention by being kind to our son, but kindness doesn't last long in our circles." She stood, dropping a $50 bill on the table. "Think carefully about what you're walking into, Sarah. Not everyone gets a second chance if they fall." Sarah sat alone long after Victoria left, her coffee growing cold. When she finally arrived at Harrison Global for her meeting, her mind was churning with doubts. The executive floor was quieter today, with a different tension in the air. She noticed whispers stopping as she passed, curious glances from elegant women and men in expensive suits. Victoria's warnings echoed in her head. Alexander. Harrison's office felt different too. Gone was the warm businessman from Friday. Today he was all efficiency, surrounded by lawyers and documents. "Miss Martinez," he nodded, gesturing to a chair. "Have you made your decision?" Sarah took a deep breath, thinking of Tommy's lonely eyes in the park, of Victoria's calculated warnings of the children at her center, who needed so much more than she could currently give them. "Before I answer," she said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice, "I need to know something. Is this really about the foundation, or is it about Tommy?" The room fell silent. Harrison dismissed his lawyers with a gesture, waiting until the door closed behind them before speaking. "You're very direct, Miss Martinez." "I have to be. The children I work with don't have time for games or hidden agendas." Something shifted in Harrison's expression, respect perhaps, or recognition. "The foundation is real. The $50 million is real. Your qualifications, your compassion, your integrity, your understanding of what children really need, those are real too." He paused. "But yes, seeing how you were with Tommy, that showed me you were the right choice." Sarah nodded slowly. "Then I have some conditions." Harrison's eyebrows rose, but he gestured for her to continue. "I want to keep working directly with children, not just managing from an office. I want real autonomy in program development. And I want to start with expanding the Riverside Center's programs as a pilot project." A smile tugged at the corner of Harrison's mouth. "Anything else?" "Yes." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I want your word that this isn't just another corporate PR move, that you're really committed to making a difference." For a long moment, Harrison studied her. Then he stood, walking to his desk and returning with a pen and the contract. "You have my word, Miss Martinez. The foundation is yours to shape." As Sarah reached for the pen, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was signing up for more than just a job. She was stepping into a world of complex relationships and hidden agendas, where every action had ripples she couldn't yet see. What she didn't know was that on another floor of the building, Victoria Harrison was already making a phone call, setting in motion events that would test every principle Sarah held dear. Sarah's first week as executive director of the Harrison Foundation was a whirlwind of introductions, meetings, and culture shock. Her new office, located on the 55th floor of Harrison Global, was bigger than her entire apartment. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view that still made her dizzy, and her assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Rebecca, seemed to anticipate her needs before she even knew them. "Your 10 a.m. is here," Rebecca announced, appearing silently at Sarah's door. Marcus Chen, head of marketing. Marcus Chen strode in with the confidence of someone who had never doubted his place in this world. His tailored suit and carefully styled hair screamed old money, but there was something else in his eyes, a calculation that reminded Sarah of Victoria. "Miss Martinez," he smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I've been looking forward to meeting you. I've prepared some preliminary marketing strategies for the Foundation's launch." He spread a glossy presentation across her desk. "We're thinking big: charity galas, celebrity endorsements, social media campaigns. We'll position you as the fresh face of philanthropy in New York." Sarah flipped through the pages, her frown deepening. "Mr. Chen, these events, they're very elaborate. The budget for this launch could fund 3 new community centers." "It's about creating buzz, Miss Martinez. The bigger the splash we make, the more donors we'll attract. More donors mean more community centers in the long run." "Or," Sarah countered, "we could start by actually helping people and let the results speak for themselves." Chen's smile tightened. "With all due respect, you're new to this world. Image is everything. One wrong move, and the Foundation becomes just another failed vanity project." "Is that what you think this is?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "A vanity project?" Before Chen could respond, a familiar voice came from the doorway. "I certainly hope not." Alexander Harrison stood there, Tommy half hidden behind him. Chen shot to his feet, his demeanor instantly changing. "Mr. Harrison, I was just discussing marketing strategies with Miss Martinez." "And how did that go?" Harrison's tone was mild, but his eyes were sharp. "We have different perspectives," Sarah said diplomatically. Harrison nodded. "Marcus, why don't you rework those proposals? Focus on substance over spectacle." After Chen left, Tommy peeked around his father. "Hi, Miss Sarah." "Tommy," Sarah's face lit up. "What brings you here?" "Dad said you have a new office." He ventured closer, eyes wide as he took in the view. "It's really high up." "It sure is. Want to see something cool?" Sarah opened her desk drawer and pulled out a small container. "I brought some ice cream." "Sandwiches. They're not as good as the cart in the park, but..." Tommy's face broke into a genuine smile. Harrison watched the interaction with an unreadable expression. "Tommy, why don't you eat that in Rebecca's office? I need to talk to Miss Martinez for a moment." Once Tommy was gone, Harrison settled into the chair Chen had vacated. "How are you finding everything?" "It's different," Sarah admitted. "Everyone has very strong opinions about how the Foundation should operate. But what do you think?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I think we're getting caught up in appearances before we've done anything worth showing off. The Riverside Center needs immediate repairs. 3 other centers in the Bronx are about to close due to lack of funding. There are real problems we could be solving right now." Harrison studied her for a long moment. "You know, when I started in business, everyone told me how things had to be done. The traditional way, the safe way." He stood, walking to the window. "I succeeded by ignoring them and trusting my instincts." He turned back to her. "The Foundation is yours to run, Sarah. Trust your instincts." After he left, Sarah sat thinking about his words. She pulled up the Foundation's budget on her computer and began making notes. If they redirected the gala budget, if they focused on immediate community needs first. Her intercom buzzed. "Miss Martinez, Mrs. Harrison is here to see you." Sarah's stomach tightened. Victoria swept in before she could respond, impeccably dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than Sarah's yearly salary. "Sarah, darling," Victoria's smile was brittle. "I heard about your meeting with Marcus. He's quite upset." "I'm sorry to hear that," Sarah replied carefully. "But the Foundation's priorities need to align with reality," Victoria cut in smoothly. "You see, Marcus isn't just our marketing head. He's also on the board of the Metropolitan Museum, chairs 3 major charity committees, and his family has connections throughout New York society. Connections the Foundation will need." She leaned forward, her voice dropping conspiratorially. "Alex may have given you autonomy, but remember, one person's vision can easily become another's failure, especially when that person is an outsider." The threat was clear, though beautifully packaged. Sarah felt her resolve hardening. "Thank you for your concern, Mrs. Harrison. Was there anything else?" Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. Just one thing. Tommy's birthday party is this weekend, a small gathering at our Hampton house. Alex mentioned inviting you, but I thought I should warn you. These events can be quite overwhelming for newcomers. After Victoria left, Sarah sat very still, processing the interaction. Every word had been perfectly polite, yet every sentence had carried a warning. She pulled up her email and began to type, "Dear Mr. Chen, please schedule a meeting to discuss revised marketing strategies. I have some ideas I'd like to explore." She paused, then added, "And thank you for your insights earlier. You were right, image does matter, but so does substance. Let's find a way to achieve both." As she hit send, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if she was extending an olive branch or walking into a trap. But one thing was becoming clear. In this world of power and privilege, every action was a move in a game she was only beginning to understand. The Harrisons' Hampton estate sprawled across 3 acres of manicured lawns, its white columns and French windows gleaming in the late afternoon sun. Sarah sat in the back of the town car Alexander had insisted on sending, feeling increasingly out of place in her simple blue sundress, the nicest thing she owned, but probably woefully inadequate. For this crowd, "Just pull up to the front," the driver instructed as they approached the gates. Sarah noticed other cars being directed to a parking area, but hers continued up the circular driveway to the main entrance. A butler, an actual butler, opened her car door. "Miss Martinez, Mr. Harrison is expecting you." The foyer was a study in understated luxury, with marble floors and crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than her student loans. Children's laughter drifted from somewhere in the back of the house, along with the sound of splashing water. "Sarah." Tommy came running in, his hair wet from the pool, leaving damp footprints on the marble. "You came." "Thomas," Victoria's voice cut through the air like a steel blade wrapped in silk. "What have I said about running in the house?" She appeared, at the top of the grand staircase, descending with practiced grace. "Sarah, darling, how lovely of you to join us, though usually guests arrive through the garden entrance." "I invited her through the front door, Victoria." Alexander appeared from a side room, dressed casually in linen pants and a light blue shirt that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. "Sarah, welcome to our home." Victoria's smile tightened imperceptibly. "Well, the party's in the back. Garden. Tommy, show Sarah the way while I finish dealing with the caterers." Tommy grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her through the house. Each room they passed was more impressive than the last, but what caught Sarah's attention were the little signs of Tommy's presence. A video game controller here, a model airplane there, somehow making the museum-like spaces feel more human. The back garden was a child's paradise. A massive pool complete with water slides, a bouncy castle, gaming stations under elegant white tents, and what looked like a small petting zoo. About 20 children were scattered around, supervised by what appeared to be an army of nannies. "Miss Martinez." Marcus Chen appeared at her elbow, holding a glass of champagne. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Mr. Chen?" Sarah nodded. "I understand we'll be meeting on Monday about the new marketing proposals." "Yes, although—" He glanced around, lowering his voice. "You should know that the board is concerned about your unconventional approaches." "The board?" Sarah frowned. "I thought the foundation was independent." Chen's smile was sympathetic, but his eyes were cold. "Nothing is truly independent in our world, Miss Martinez. Everything's connected. Speaking of which, have you met James Porter? He's head of our legal department and very interested in your plans for the foundation." Before Sarah could respond, Tommy tugged at her hand. "Come see the rabbits." As she let Tommy lead her away, Sarah caught Victoria watching her from across the garden, speaking in low tones with a group of elegantly dressed women who kept glancing in her direction. The pause. Afternoon progressed like a masterclass in subtle social warfare. Every introduction came with an undercurrent of evaluation. Every conversation felt like a test she hadn't studied for. Even the other children's parents seemed to be weighing and measuring her worth with each interaction. She found refuge by the petting zoo, helping Tommy feed the rabbits while other children gradually drifted over. drawn by her natural warmth and ability to speak to them on their level. "You're good with them." Sarah turned to find Alexander watching her, his expression thoughtful. "It's my job," she said simply. "Was your job," he corrected. "Now you're supposed to be running a multi-million-dollar foundation." "Why can't I do both?" He smiled slightly. "Victoria thinks I'm making a mistake. That you're too unpolished for this position. And what do you think?" "I think," he said slowly, "that Polish can be learned. But genuine compassion, that's rare in our world." He paused. "The Children's Hospital Board is meeting next week. They're looking for new partners for their pediatric mental health initiative." Sarah's eyes lit up. The foundation could help establish counseling programs in schools, create support systems for families. Exactly. But Victoria's cousin chairs the board, and Marcus Chen's wife is the hospital's chief of surgery. The message was clear. In this world, personal connections could make or break even the most worthy causes. "Mr. Harrison," Sarah began, carefully, "why did you really choose me for this position?" He was quiet for a moment, watching Tommy laugh with the other children. "Because you remind me of someone I used to be, before all this." He gestured at the grand house, the elaborate party. "Someone who believed that doing good was more important than looking good." Their conversation was interrupted by Victoria's voice over the garden's hidden speaker system, announcing it was time for cake. As they walked back to the main party area, Sarah noticed Tommy slip his small hand into his father's, and saw Alexander's fingers tighten almost imperceptibly around it. The cake was a masterpiece of engineering, 5 tiers of chocolate and vanilla, decorated with what appeared to be hand-painted fondant racing cars. As everyone gathered to sing, Sarah watched the interplay of the key players around her. Victoria orchestrating the perfect photo opportunity, Marcus Chen speaking intently with board members, Alexander's hand still holding his son's. And she realized something important. In this world of power and privilege, authenticity might be her greatest weapon. These people could play their social games better than she ever could, but none of them could fake the genuine connection she had with the children, the real passion she had for her work. As Tommy blew out his candles, Sarah made a wish of her own, that she could find a way to navigate this complex new world without losing sight of who she was and why she was here. The Children's Hospital boardroom felt like a courtroom, with Sarah standing before a jury of New York's elite. 20 pairs of eyes watched her presentation, some curious, others openly skeptical. Victoria's cousin, Dr. Elizabeth Montgomery, sat at the head of the table, her expression carefully neutral. "Our proposal," Sarah continued, clicking to the next slide, "is to establish integrated mental health services in 10 underserved schools as a pilot program. This would include on-site counselors, family support services, and crisis intervention teams." She'd spent weeks preparing for this moment, working late into the night with her small but dedicated team. The numbers were solid, the research comprehensive. But in this room she knew facts and figures weren't enough. "An ambitious proposal, Miss Martinez." Dr. Montgomery's voice was cool and measured. "But why schools? Wouldn't it be more effective to centralize services at the hospital?" Sarah met her gaze steadily. "Many families can't afford to take time off work for regular hospital visits. By bringing services to the schools, we remove that barrier. Plus, early intervention in familiar environments shows better outcomes." "And the cost?" Marcus Chen's wife, Dr. Chen, leaned forward. $20 million for a pilot program seems excessive. Less expensive than treating severe mental health crises in the ER, Sarah countered. "Our projections show a 40% reduction in emergency psychiatric admissions within the first year." A murmur ran through the room. Sarah caught Alexander Harrison hiding a smile behind his hand. He sat at the far end of the table, deliberately distant from the decision-makers. "It's not just about numbers," Sarah continued, switching to a slide showing children's artwork from her old community center. "These are real children, real families. Every day we wait is another day they struggle without support." The presentation concluded, and Sarah waited as the board members conferred in hushed tones. Victoria, who had slipped in halfway through, was now whispering intently to her cousin. "We'll need time to review the full proposal," Dr. Montgomery announced finally. "But I must say, Miss Martinez, your passion is compelling." As the room emptied, Sarah began gathering her materials, her hands shaking slightly from leftover adrenaline. "Well done." She turned to find Alexander still in his chair, watching her with an unreadable expression. "Thank you," she said, "though I'm not sure it was enough." "It was better than enough," he stood, approaching her. "You showed them something they rarely see in these rooms, genuine conviction." "Mr. Harrison," Sarah hesitated, then pressed on, "I noticed you stayed quiet during the discussion. This needs to be your victory, not mine." He helped her collect her papers. "Though I must admit, watching Victoria's face when you quoted those success statistics was quite entertaining." Sarah couldn't help but smile. Over the past weeks, she'd begun to see different sides of Alexander Harrison. Yes, he was still the ruthless businessman who'd built an empire, but there were moments when the facade cracked, revealing glimpses of someone else, someone who remembered what it was like to fight for what you believed in. Dad, Miss Sarah. They turned to find Tommy in the doorway, still in his school uniform. Next to him stood his nanny, Mrs. Reynolds, looking apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Harrison. He insisted on coming to see Miss Sarah after school." "It's fine," Alexander waved. Off the apology. "Though shouldn't you be at your mother's house today, sport?" Tommy's face fell slightly. "Mom's at her yoga retreat again, but Mrs. Reynolds said we could get ice cream." He looked hopefully at Sarah. "Will you come with us?" Sarah glanced at her watch, then at the stack of work waiting for her. "Actually, I could use some ice cream right now." The small ice cream parlor near the hospital was a world. Away from the formal boardroom, Tommy sat between them, happily demolishing a chocolate sundae while telling them about his school project on planets. "And did you know," he said around a mouthful of whipped cream, "that Saturn's rings are made of ice and rocks?" "Really?" Sarah leaned in, genuinely interested. "What else did you learn?" Alexander watched them interact, something soft and almost vulnerable crossing his features. Sarah caught him looking and raised an eyebrow questioningly. "Just thinking," he said quietly, "about how something as simple as ice cream seems to make everything clearer." Later that evening, as Sarah worked late in her office, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Board meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring the full proposal. E.M." She stared at the message from Dr. Montgomery, her heart racing. Another text followed quickly. "Don't celebrate yet. Victoria has her own proposal to present. Chen." Sarah looked out at the city lights, thinking about Tommy's excited face as he talked about planets, about Alexander's quiet support, about Victoria's subtle machinations. In this world of complex motivations and hidden agendas, she was learning that the most powerful moves often looked like the simplest ones. She pulled up her presentation again, making notes. Tomorrow would be another battle, but tonight she could still taste chocolate ice cream and hope. Sarah arrived early the next morning to find her office already occupied. Lisa sat perched on her desk, still in her nursing scrubs from the night shift, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this." Lisa handed her a cup. "Big day, right? How did you even get in here?" "Your assistant likes me, plus I brought her a cranberry muffin." Lisa grinned. "So ready to take on the evil stepmother?" "Victoria's not evil," Sarah sighed, settling behind her desk. "She's just protecting her interests, and she's not my stepmother. No, but the way you and Mr. Tall, Dark and Wealthy have been looking at each other—" "Lisa," Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "It's not like that. He's my boss, Tommy's father, and very much still involved in a complex situation with his ex-wife." "Uh-huh." Lisa's knowing smile faded into something more serious. "Just be careful, okay? I know you. You lead with your heart, and that's beautiful. But these people, they play by different rules." Before Sarah could respond, Rebecca appeared in the doorway. "Miss Martinez, there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent." A woman stepped into the office, elegant despite obvious signs of stress and fatigue. Sarah recognized her immediately. Dr. Chen, Marcus's wife. Miss Martinez. Dr. Chen glanced at Lisa. Could we speak privately? Lisa squeezed Sarah's shoulder as she left. Call me later? Once they were alone, Dr. Chen settled into a chair, her professional composure cracking slightly. I shouldn't be here. If Marcus knew... Dr. Chen, what's wrong? Claire, please. She took a deep breath. I saw Victoria's proposal. She wants to consolidate all mental health services into a new private wing at the hospital. Exclusive, expensive, with the Foundation's money funding scholarships for a select few underprivileged children. Sarah felt her stomach sink. That's exactly what we're trying to avoid. Access shouldn't depend on scholarships or charity. I know. Claire's fingers twisted in her lap. I was chief resident in the ER before I married Marcus. I saw what happens when children don't get help early enough, when families can't afford care. She straightened. Your proposal is better. It will help more people. But Victoria has been calling in favors, making promises. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of watching good ideas die because they don't serve the right people's interests. Claire stood. The board votes in 2 hours. Victoria doesn't know, but I hold proxy votes for 3 members who are out of the country. Use that information however you want. After she left, Sarah sat thinking. 3 votes could swing the decision, but only if she could convince enough other members to stand against Victoria's influence. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. Tommy asked if you're coming to his school play next week. No pressure, but he's very excited about his role as Mars. Sarah smiled despite her anxiety. Another text followed quickly. Also, good luck today, though I suspect you won't need it. The boardroom was even more crowded than the day before. Victoria sat near her cousin, radiating confident authority. When she stood to present her proposal, her voice was smooth as honey. While Miss Martinez's community-based approach is admirable, she said, we must consider the Foundation's image. A state-of-the-art facility bearing the Harrison name would attract donors, generate positive press. Sarah listened, making notes, waiting. When her turn came, she didn't stand immediately. Instead, she looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. Yesterday, I showed you numbers and research. Today, I want to tell you about Jamie. She pulled out a child's drawing. Jamie started coming to my community center last year. His family couldn't afford therapy, even though he desperately needed it. His mother worked 3 jobs. Taking him to a hospital across town wasn't an option. The room was silent, watching. We found him a counselor who could see him during lunch breaks at school. Simple, right? Just an hour a week. But that hour meant his grades improved. He started sleeping better. His mother didn't have to choose between helping her son and keeping her jobs. Sarah stood now, her voice strong. We can build something, beautiful and exclusive, that helps a few children, or we can build something that transforms entire communities. The choice is yours. The vote was close, very close. But when Dr. Montgomery announced the results, Sarah's proposal had won by 2 votes. Victoria's face was a masterpiece of controlled fury. As the room emptied, she approached Sarah. Impressive, her voice was arctic. I underestimated you. It won't happen again. Mrs. Harrison, Sarah met her gaze steadily. This isn't a competition. We're supposed to be helping children. Everything is a competition in our world, dear. You'll learn. Victoria's smile was sharp. Oh, and about Tommy's play next week? Family only, I'm afraid. We have to maintain some boundaries, don't we? But later that afternoon, Sarah received an email from Tommy's school, an official invitation to the play, signed by his teacher. Attached was a note from Alexander. Tommy insisted on adding you to the guest list himself. Sometimes the simplest gestures mean the most, don't they? Sarah sat back in her chair, thinking about boundaries and gestures, about power and influence, about the different ways people fought for what they believed in. She had won this round, but Victoria's words echoed in her mind. Everything is a competition in our world. The question was, could she keep winning without becoming the very thing she was fighting against? The elementary school auditorium buzzed with excitement as parents and family members filed in for the 5th grade space play. Sarah found herself seated in the second row, surrounded by the subtle indicators of wealth that now seemed normal. To her, designer handbags, expensive perfumes, casual conversations about summer homes in the Hamptons. "Sarah," Tommy's excited whisper came from behind the curtain. "You came." She turned to see him peeking out, his face painted red for his role as Mars, his eyes bright with anticipation. "Of course I came. Wouldn't miss it for the world." "Thomas," Victoria's voice cut through the moment. "Back behind the curtain. Now." She appeared beside him, steering him away with a firm hand on his shoulder. Her eyes met Sarah's briefly, cold as winter. Alexander slipped into the seat next to Sarah just as the lights began to dim. "Sorry I'm late. Board meeting ran over." "I wasn't sure you'd make it," Sarah whispered as the music started. "And miss my son's theatrical debut?" He smiled slightly. "Some things are more important than meetings." The play was charmingly amateur, with cardboard planets and glitter-covered stars hanging from visible strings. Tommy, despite his minor role as Mars, delivered his lines with enthusiasm, especially when explaining why he was the best planet for future human colonies. During the intermission, Alexander leaned closer to Sarah. "Having dinner with Tommy, and me afterward. He's been talking about it all week." "I don't know," Sarah hesitated. Victoria has yoga." His voice held a touch of amusement. "Besides, Tommy chose the restaurant. He says you'll like it." After the play, as other parents clustered around their little stars with professional cameras and elaborate flower arrangements, Tommy ran straight to Sarah and Alexander. "Did you see?" he asked breathlessly. "Did you see when I explained about the polar ice caps?" "You were amazing," Sarah assured him, accepting his tight hug. "A natural scientist." "Just wait until you see where we're going for dinner." Tommy grabbed both their hands, pulling them toward the exit. "Dad said we could go to your favorite place." Sarah looked at Alexander questioningly. "The ice cream parlor," he explained with a slight smile. "Apparently it's now Tommy's favorite restaurant too." The small ice cream shop was a stark contrast to the usual establishments Alexander Harrison frequented. The vinyl booths were worn, the fluorescent lighting harsh, but Tommy's face lit up as if they'd entered a 5-star restaurant. "Can I get the super deluxe sundae?" he asked, pressing his nose against the display case. "Only if you share it with us," Alexander said, watching his son with undisguised affection. "It's bigger than your head." They settled into a corner booth, Tommy between them, attacking the massive sundae with 3 spoons. For a moment, they could have been any family enjoying a post-performance celebration. "Dad," Tommy said between bites, "can Sarah come to the beach house this weekend? You said we could look at the stars, and she knows all about Mars now." Alexander glanced at Sarah. "Well, that depends on if Sarah's free." "Please?" Tommy's eyes were hopeful. "Mum's going to be at another retreat, and Mrs. Reynolds is boring when we look at stars. She just plays on her phone." Before Sarah could respond, her own phone buzzed. The text from Rebecca made her blood run cold. "Emergency. Victoria called emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Subject: Foundation Leadership Review." Alexander must have seen something in her expression. "Tommy, why don't you get us some napkins?" Once Tommy was out of earshot, Sarah showed him the text. His face hardened. "She's making her move." "Can she do this? Force a leadership review?" "She's been gathering support," he said quietly. "Marcus Chen has been speaking to board members, suggesting the foundation needs more traditional leadership." "Why now?" "Because you're winning." He met her eyes directly. "Not just the hospital project. You're winning Tommy's trust, the respect of people who matter. Victoria sees it." Sarah felt her chest tighten. "I should go. Start preparing for tomorrow." "Sarah," Alexander's hand covered hers briefly. "Whatever happens tomorrow, remember, you've already changed things. Changed us." Tommy returned with a handful of napkins, oblivious to the tension. "Can we get another scoop? The chocolate's almost gone." Sarah managed to smile. "Actually, buddy, I need to go. Big meeting tomorrow." "But the stars." "Tell you what," she said, trying to keep her voice light. "Let me get through this meeting and then we'll plan something special. Deal?" Tommy nodded, but his disappointed expression stayed with her as she left the ice cream parlor. Outside, the city lights drowned out any stars that might have been visible, but Sarah remembered Tommy's enthusiasm about Mars, about polar ice caps and human colonies. She pulled out her phone and called Lisa. "I need your help," she said as soon as her sister answered. "I have to prepare for a board meeting that could change everything." "I'll bring coffee," Lisa replied without hesitation. "And Sarah, remember what you told me when I was freaking out about my nursing exams?" "What?" "Sometimes the best preparation is remembering why you started in the first place." Sarah looked back through the ice cream shop window where Tommy was now showing His Father Something and his space play script, both of them laughing. Why she started? It had never been about power games or corporate politics. It had been about making a difference, one child at a time. Tomorrow would test everything she'd built, but tonight she could still taste chocolate ice cream and see Mars in a little boy's eyes. The Harrison Global boardroom felt different in the early morning light, colder, more austere. Sarah sat alone at the massive table, reviewing her notes one last time. She'd been there since dawn, preparing for what she knew would be the fight of her professional life. Board members filtered in slowly, their expressions carefully neutral. Marcus Chen arrived with a group of senior executives, all of them avoiding her eyes. Dr. Montgomery took her seat without her usual acknowledgement of Sarah's presence. Even Claire Chen, who had helped her before, kept her distance. Victoria, swept in last, immaculate in a power suit that probably cost more than Sarah's car. She took her seat at the head of the table, a position that should have been Alexander's, but he was conspicuously absent. "As this is an emergency session," Victoria began without preamble, "we'll dispense with the usual formalities. We're here to discuss the direction of the Harrison Foundation, specifically its current leadership." She gestured to Marcus Chen, who stood with a thick folder. "Our review has identified several areas of concern. Miss Martinez's lack of executive experience has led to decisions that, while well-intentioned, threaten the Foundation's long-term stability and reputation." Sarah listened as they laid out their case. Every success she'd achieved was reframed as a potential liability. The school mental health program, too dispersed, hard to control. Her hands-on approach with children, unprofessional, beneath the dignity of an executive director. Her background in social work, insufficient for managing large-scale operations. When Chen finished, Victoria smiled thinly. "Miss Martinez, would you like to respond?" Sarah stood slowly, looking around the room at the faces she'd come to know over the past months. Some wouldn't meet her eyes. Others watched with varying degrees of sympathy or calculation. "Before I respond," she said carefully, "I'd like to show you something." She opened her laptop, connecting it to the room's projection system. The screen filled with children's artwork, not the polished pieces from private school art classes, but raw, honest expressions of hope and pain and resilience. These were drawn by children in our new school programs, children who 2 months ago had no access to mental health support. She clicked through the images. This one, the artist is a 12-year-old girl who couldn't speak about her anxiety until our counselor started visiting her school. Now she's teaching other kids how to express their feelings through art. She changed to a spreadsheet, and here are the numbers Mr. Chen didn't mention. Emergency room visits for mental health crises down 35% in participating schools. Attendance up 28%. Parent participation in school activities increased by 50%. Victoria's smile had turned brittle. "Impressive statistics, but..." "I'm not finished." Sarah's voice was quiet but firm. "You say I lack executive experience? True. You say I'm not from your world? Also true. But I know something you don't. I know what it's like to be a child who needs help and can't get it. I know what it's like to watch a system fail the people it's supposed to protect." She clicked to one final image, Tommy's drawing of Mars. From his play preparation, carefully labeled with facts about polar ice caps and future human colonies. Children don't care about our corporate politics or social maneuvering. They care about having someone listen to them, believe in them, fight for them. She met Victoria's eyes directly. That's what this foundation should be about. Not our reputation, not our social standing, but actual measurable impact on young lives. The room was silent, then a new voice spoke from the doorway. She's right. Alexander Harrison stood there, and he wasn't alone. Behind him were parents from the school mental health program, teachers, counselors, and, most surprisingly, several major donors Sarah had never met. "I apologize for being late," Alexander said, entering the room with his entourage. "We were finalizing some details. You see, these parents and educators wanted to share their experiences with the Foundation's new initiatives. And these donors," he gestured to the well-dressed individuals behind him, "they're very interested in expanding our programs to more schools." Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "Alex, this is an emergency board meeting. These people can't—" "Actually, they can." He placed a document on the table. "As chairman of the board, I'm exercising my right to expand this meeting to include stakeholder testimony. Unless you'd prefer to explain to our donors why we're considering removing the leadership that impressed them enough to double their commitments." The room erupted in murmurs. Sarah watched as Victoria's carefully constructed plan began to unravel. One by one, parents stood to speak about the changes they'd seen in their children. Teachers described transformed classrooms. Donors talked about the Foundation's enhanced reputation for actual impact rather than just social prestige. When the testimony finished, Alexander called for a vote. "All in favor of maintaining current Foundation leadership?" Hands rose across the room. Even Marcus Chen, reading the shifting winds, raised his hand. Victoria sat rigid, her own hand firmly in her lap. "Motion carries," Alexander announced. "Meeting adjourned." As the room cleared, Sarah remained seated, slightly dazed by the sudden turn of events. Alexander approached her chair. "I hope you—" "Don't mind," he said quietly. "When I heard about the meeting, I made some calls. It seems you've made quite an impression on people." "Thank you," she managed. "But why?" "Because you were right," he interrupted. "About everything. About what the Foundation should be, about what matters." He paused. "About what I'd forgotten until you reminded me." Victoria's voice cut through their moment. "Congratulations, Sarah." Her tone was ice over steel. "You've won this round, but remember, in our world the game never really ends." She left with her head high, Marcus Chen trailing in her wake. Alexander watched them go with a mixture of weariness and resolution. "She's right, you know," he said to Sarah. "This isn't over." "I know." Sarah gathered her materials, including Tommy's Mars drawing. "But at least now, I know what I'm fighting for." Outside the boardroom, the morning sun had fully risen, painting the city in shades of possibility. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. "Dad says you're still in charge of the Foundation. Can we look at the stars this weekend?" She smiled, typing back, "Absolutely. And guess what? I hear Mars is particularly visible this time of year." The weeks following the emergency board meeting brought changes no one could have predicted. The Harrison Foundation's success had caught the attention of national media, with features in major publications highlighting their innovative approach to children's mental health. Donations poured in, and requests to replicate their school program came from cities across the country. Sarah sat in her office, surrounded by expansion proposals and interview requests, when Rebecca appeared at her door. "Miss Martinez, there's something you should see." She handed Sarah a tablet open to a society blog. The headline made her stomach drop. "Harrison heirs new mother figure. Sources say Victoria concerned about son's growing attachment." The article was a masterpiece of implied scandal, suggesting that Sarah was using Tommy to position herself within the Harrison family. Photos showed her with Tommy at the ice cream parlor, at his school play walking in Central Park. The comments section was already filling with speculation about her intentions. "Delete any mention of this from my media briefs," Sarah told Rebecca. "It's not worth dignifying with a response." But the damage was already spreading. That afternoon she overheard whispers in the office hallways. Her calls with potential donors began including subtle questions about her relationship with the Harrison family. Even some of the parents at their program schools seemed to look at her differently. "You should sue for defamation," Lisa insisted over their weekly sister dinner. "This is obviously Victoria's work." Sarah pushed her pasta around her plate. "That would only make it worse. Besides, we have no proof she's behind it." "Then what are you going to do?" Before Sarah could answer, her phone lit up with Alexander's name. "Sarah, are you free to talk?" His voice was strained. "Tommy's upset. The other kids at school, they're saying things about you, about us." Sarah closed her eyes. Of course Victoria would have known the article would reach Tommy's private school circle. "How is he?" "Confused, angry. He wants to see you, but Victoria's using this to petition for stricter custody arrangements. She's claiming I'm showing poor judgment in allowing Tommy to become so attached to my employee." The word employee stung more than it should have. "What do you need me to do?" There was a long pause. Maybe we should take a step back, just until this dies down." Sarah felt something crack in her chest. "You mean I should stay away from Tommy?" "Just temporarily." "Victoria's lawyers—" "I understand," Sarah interrupted, her voice carefully controlled. "Will that be all, Mr. Harrison?" The formality made him sigh. "Sarah." "I have a lot of work to do. Good night, Mr. Harrison." She ended the call and looked at Lisa, who had heard enough to understand. "Oh, honey, don't." Sarah stood abruptly. "I need to focus on work. The foundation is expanding. We have new programs to implement." But the next morning, the foundation's atmosphere had shifted. Board members who had supported her now kept their distance. Marcus Chen walked past her office with a poorly concealed smirk. Even Claire Chen avoided eye contact in the hallway. Sarah threw herself into work, staying late into the evening reviewing program data and writing proposals. It was nearly midnight when a soft knock at her door made her look up. Rebecca stood there holding a familiar drawing. "I found this while organizing the boardroom files. Thought you might want it." It was Tommy's Mars drawing, slightly crumpled now. Sarah traced the carefully labeled ice caps with her finger, remembering his excited explanations about human colonies and space exploration. "Rebecca," she said suddenly, "get me everything you can find about Victoria's yoga retreats. Dates, locations, everything." "Her retreats?" Rebecca looked confused. "Yes, and call Lisa. Tell her I need her research skills. Something's not adding up." Over the next few days, while maintaining her public focus on foundation work, Sarah pieced together a pattern. Victoria's retreats coincided perfectly with major foundation events and decisions. The timing of the blog article, the coordinated social media response, the sudden shift in board member attitudes, it was too organized to be coincidence. She was deep in spreadsheets and social media timestamps when her office door opened. Alexander stood there looking tired and uncertain. "Sarah, we need to talk." "Mr. Harrison, I'm quite busy with the Chicago expansion proposal." "Sarah," his voice softened. "Please." She finally looked up at him. "How's Tommy?" "Miserable. He thinks he did something wrong, that he's the reason you disappeared." The words hit her like physical blows. "I didn't disappear. I was told to step back." "I know I was wrong." He ran a hand through his hair. "I let Victoria manipulate the situation, use Tommy as leverage, again." "It's not about me," Sarah said, standing to face him. "This is about the foundation. Victoria's been orchestrating everything from the beginning. The board meeting, the article, the social pressure. It's all part of a larger plan." She showed him her findings, the patterns, the coincidences, the carefully timed moves. "She's not at yoga retreats," Sarah concluded. "She's been meeting with someone, planning each step. The question is, who?" Alexander studied the data, his expression darkening. "I think I know, and if I'm right, this goes beyond the foundation." He looked at Sarah with new intensity. "Do you trust me?" "That depends." She met his gaze steadily. "Do you trust me?" The question hung between them, weighted with everything unsaid, about Tommy, about their relationship, about the choices that had led them here. "Yes," he said finally, "more than I've trusted anyone in a very long time." Sarah nodded, pulling out Tommy's Mars drawing. Then let's figure this out, for him, for all the children who need us to keep fighting. What neither of them knew was that at that very moment, Victoria was also in a late-night meeting, finalizing plans that would test not just the foundation, but every relationship and principle they held dear. The private dining room at Likai. Bernardine hummed with quiet conversation and the clink of expensive crystal. Victoria Harrison sat across from James Porter, Harrison Global's head of legal affairs, her perfectly manicured fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass. "Everything is proceeding according to plan," Porter said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The board is wavering, major donors are asking questions, and Alexander's judgment is being called into question." Victoria smiled coldly. "And the takeover preparations?" "Nearly complete. Once we prove Alexander's emotional involvement is compromising his business decisions, the board will have no choice but to act. The foundation scandal is just the beginning." Neither of them noticed the waiter lingering slightly too long while refilling their water glasses, nor did they recognize him as Claire Chen's younger brother, recently hired after Sarah helped him through the restaurant's training program. Across town, Sarah and Alexander worked late into the night, connecting dots they hadn't seen before. The waiter's text to his sister brought the final piece into focus. "It was never about the foundation," Alexander said, pacing Sarah's office. "Porter's been trying to take control of Harrison Global for years. Victoria's giving him the ammunition he needs. By making you appear emotionally compromised?" Sarah's voice was bitter. "Because of me. Because I'm changing," he corrected. "The foundation, Tommy, it's all making me reprioritize things. That scares them." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. "Dad, can you and Sarah come to my science presentation tomorrow? I'm talking about Mars again." They looked at each other, the weight of the moment heavy between them. "Go," Alexander said softly. "I'll handle Porter." "No," Sarah stood, gathering her files. "We handle this together. Tommy needs to see that standing up for what's right is more important than playing their games." The next morning, Sarah arrived at Tommy's school to find Victoria already there, sitting primly in the front row. But when Tommy walked to the front of the class, his eyes lit up at seeing Sarah and his father slip into seats at the back. "My presentation is about Mars," Tommy began, his voice gaining confidence. "But it's also about something more important. How? Sometimes the hardest things are worth doing because they help everyone." He clicked to his first slide, a photo of the Foundation's school program. "Just like we're learning to help kids on Earth before we can help people on Mars, scientists had to solve lots of problems to even think about space colonies." Victoria's face tightened as Tommy continued, weaving together his passion for Mars with stories about the Foundation's work. When he finished, the applause was genuine, led by his beaming teacher. "That was wonderful, Thomas," Victoria said, approaching him, though perhaps a bit off-topic. "Actually," his teacher interjected, "Tommy's connection between scientific progress and social responsibility was quite sophisticated. We've been discussing how science serves humanity." Victoria's reply was cut off by a commotion in the hallway. James Porter burst in, his face flushed. "Alexander, we need to talk. Now." "About the takeover attempt?" Alexander's voice carried clearly. "Or about how you've been manipulating my family to gain control of my company?" The classroom fell silent. Porter's face went from red to white. "I have proof," Alexander continued calmly, "of everything. The fake retreats, the coordinated attacks on the Foundation, the manipulation of board members. Would you like to discuss it here or in front of the board?" Victoria stepped forward, her composure cracking. "Alex, think about what you're doing. The company is stronger than ever," he interrupted. "Because for the first time in years, I remember why I built it. Not for power or status, but to make a difference." He looked at Tommy, then at Sarah. "Some things are worth fighting for." Porter backed toward the door. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is." Claire Chen appeared in the doorway holding a phone, recording. "My brother's quite good at capturing interesting dinner conversations. The board would love to hear your takeover plans." As Porter and Victoria were escorted out by security, Tommy looked between his father and Sarah. "Did I help? With my presentation?" Sarah knelt beside him. "You helped more than you know, buddy. You reminded us all what really matters." Later that evening, they celebrated at their usual ice cream parlor. Tommy excitedly planned his next science presentation, while Alexander and Sarah shared quiet looks over his head. "You know," Alexander said softly, "I was wrong to ask you to step back. Some things are worth any risk." Sarah watched Tommy demonstrate the Mars rover's movement pattern with his spoon. "Yes, they are." But as they enjoyed their ice cream victory, none of them suspected that Victoria's departure from Harrison Global was just the beginning. She had one more card to play, one that would test not just their professional relationship, but the deepening personal bonds they'd all tried so hard to deny. The autumn breeze carried the scent of change through Central Park as Sarah and Tommy sat on their favorite bench near the ice cream cart, sharing a moment of peace in the aftermath of the recent turmoil. The Foundation's school program had expanded to 30 schools, and Tommy had just received top marks for his Mars presentation. "Miss Sarah," Tommy said, carefully licking his ice cream cone, "are you and Dad going to get married?" Sarah nearly choked on her own ice cream. "Tommy, what makes you ask that?" "Well, Mum's been telling everyone that's why she had to leave her job at the Foundation, because you and Dad are secretly in love." He said it matter-of-factly, the way children often deliver their most devastating observations. Sarah took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Your mom is dealing with a lot of changes right now. Sometimes when people are upset, they say things that aren't true. But you do love Dad, right? And he loves you, I can tell." Before Sarah could formulate a response, her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Emergency at the Foundation. CNN breaking news about Victoria Harrison's tell-all interview. You need to see this. Tommy, we need to head back early today. I have an important meeting." His face fell slightly. "Is it about Mom again?" Sarah's heart ached at his perception. "Yeah, buddy, it is." When they arrived at Harrison Global, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Rebecca met them at the elevator, tablet in hand. "Mr. Harrison is waiting in the conference room. Mrs. Reynolds is here to take Tommy." The conference room was filled with executives, lawyers, and PR specialists. Alexander stood at the window, his posture rigid as he watched Victoria's interview play on the massive screen. "And of course, it was devastating to discover that my husband's relationship with the Foundation's director went far beyond professional." "Boundaries," Victoria was saying, her expression perfectly crafted to convey hurt and concern. "But my primary worry is for my son, who's being used as a pawn in their romantic entanglement." The interviewer leaned forward eagerly. "Are you suggesting that Sarah Martinez's relationship with your son was calculated to win Alexander Harrison's affection?" "I'm simply saying that a woman in her position, with her background, would understand the advantages of endearing herself to both father and son." Alexander muted the screen, turning to the room. "Options?" The PR team launched into damage control strategies. The lawyers debated defamation suits, but Sarah stayed quiet, studying the paused image of Victoria's face, the subtle triumph in her eyes, the calculated precision of her attack. "Sarah?" Alexander's voice cut through the noise. "Your thoughts?" She stood slowly, facing the room. "Victoria's not trying to hurt the Foundation or even me. This is about Tommy." "Explain," Alexander said, though his expression suggested he was already following her thinking. "Every attack has centered on my relationship with Tommy. The blog, posts, the custody petition, and now this interview. She's building a case that my presence in his life is harmful." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "She's going for full custody," one of the lawyers said quietly, "and she's using public opinion to strengthen her case." Alexander's face hardened. "She won't succeed." "She might," Sarah said softly. "Unless—" "No." His voice was sharp. "Don't even suggest stepping away again." "I'm not." Sarah moved to the window, watching the city below. "I'm suggesting we change the narrative, not by denying or defending, but by showing the truth." She turned back to the room. The foundation isn't about me or Victoria or even you, Alexander. It's about the children we're helping. Tommy understood that in his presentation. He saw the connection between scientific progress and helping people. She clicked to a new slide on her laptop, displaying data from their school programs. While Victoria's been plotting her revenge, we've helped hundreds of children access mental health support. We've created safe spaces in schools. We've given parents resources they desperately needed. The PR team began nodding, seeing where she was going. So we don't fight Victoria's accusations directly, Sarah continued. We show what the foundation is really about. Let the work speak for itself. Alexander studied her for a long moment. And the personal allegations? Sarah met his gaze steadily. The truth is, I care deeply about Tommy. And yes, I care about you too. But my commitment to these children, to this work, that's not part of some calculated plan. It's who I am. The room buzzed with renewed energy as teams began crafting the foundation's response. But Alexander touched Sarah's arm, drawing her aside. We need to talk, he said quietly, about what's really going on between us. Sarah glanced at the muted screen where Victoria's interview was still playing. Is now the best time? Now might be the only time. His voice dropped lower. Because Tommy's right, isn't he? About what we've been trying not to admit. Before Sarah could respond, Rebecca burst into the room. Sorry to interrupt, but you both need to see this. Victoria's filed an emergency custody petition. The hearing is tomorrow morning. Sarah felt the world tilt slightly. Tomorrow would determine not just Tommy's future, but the foundation's path forward and the delicate balance of relationships they'd all been trying to maintain. Alexander's hand found hers briefly, hidden from the room's view. Whatever happens tomorrow, he whispered, we face it together. As teams of lawyers and PR specialists swirled around them, Sarah thought about Tommy's simple question on the park bench. Were they in love? Maybe. But more importantly, they were fighting for something bigger than themselves, for Tommy, for the foundation, for all the children who needed someone in their corner. The real question was, would that be enough to withstand Victoria's final assault on everything they'd built? The family court building loomed grey and imposing in the morning light. Sarah sat in the waiting area, smoothing her conservative navy suit for the 100th time. Around her, Alexander's legal team huddled in whispered conversations, while Tommy sat between his parents in uncomfortable silence. Victoria had orchestrated everything perfectly. The timing of her interview, the public speculation it generated, even the judge assigned to their case, rumored to be particularly sensitive to matters of social propriety and class distinction. The court will hear the petition for emergency custody modification in the matter of Harrison versus Harrison, the clerk announced. As they filed into the courtroom, Sarah caught Tommy's frightened glance. She tried to smile reassuringly, even as she took a seat in the back row, away from the family. Victoria's lawyer spoke first, painting a compelling picture of a mother concerned for her child's well-being. Mrs. Harrison has watched with growing alarm as her son has been drawn into an inappropriate relationship with her ex-husband's employee. An employee who, evidence suggests, has orchestrated this emotional manipulation for personal gain. The lawyer presented screenshots of Sarah and Tommy at various outings, the blog posts, Victoria's interview responses. Each piece carefully selected to suggest calculation rather than genuine care. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, Miss Martinez's influence has caused Thomas to withdraw from his proper social circle, spending time in inappropriate venues rather than attending suitable social functions with his peers. Sarah felt her hands clench as the lawyer described their ice cream parlor visits as deliberately cultivating dependency in inappropriate settings. When Alexander's lawyer rose to respond, he took a different approach. Before we proceed, Your Honor, we'd like to call Thomas Harrison to speak. Victoria's team objected immediately, but the judge, after some consideration, allowed it. Tommy walked to the front, looking smaller than usual in his school uniform, but when he spoke, his voice was clear and steady. Mom says Miss Sarah is trying to replace her, he began. But that's not true. Miss Sarah never tries to make me do anything or be anything. She just listens. and she helps me understand things. He pulled something from his pocket, the Mars drawing from his presentation. Like with this, I was scared to talk about science stuff because some kids think it's boring, but Miss Sarah said sometimes the things we care about can help other people, even if not everyone understands at first. The judge leaned forward. And how does this relate to your mother's concerns? Mom wants me to be like her friends' kids, to do the right activities and go to the right places. But Dad and Miss Sarah, they want me to be me. Tommy's voice wavered slightly. Even if that means getting ice cream instead of going to fancy restaurants. Victoria's lawyer stood. Your Honor, this emotional manipulation is exactly what concerns my client. The child has clearly been coached. I have not been coached. Tommy's unexpected outburst silenced the room. Mom's the one who tells me what to say and how to act. Miss Sarah just asks what I think and actually listens. Abikiah. Judge called for order as Tommy returned to his seat. Sarah noticed Victoria's perfectly composed expression crack slightly. Alexander's lawyer then presented their evidence, documentation of the foundation's success, testimonials from parents and educators, and finally, a surprising witness. The court calls Claire Chen. Claire walked to the front, elegant as always, but with new determination in her bearing. She testified about Victoria's meetings with Porter, the orchestrated attacks on the foundation, and most importantly, about what she'd observed of Sarah's interactions with Tommy. I was skeptical of Miss Martinez at first, Claire admitted. In our world, genuine people are rare, but I've watched her build something extraordinary with the foundation, always putting the children first, including Tommy. The judge listened intently, taking notes. When both sides had presented their cases, he called for a brief recess. Sarah found herself in the hallway, trying to calm her racing heart, when Tommy slipped away from his parents to find her. Miss Sarah? His voice was small. If Mom wins, will I still get to see you? Before she could answer, Victoria appeared. Thomas, come here immediately. But Tommy stood his ground. No, Mom. I want to talk to Miss Sarah. This is exactly what I mean, Victoria hissed. You've turned my son against me. No one has turned me against you, Tommy said, showing a maturity beyond his years. But you're trying to take away someone who makes me feel good about being myself, just like you tried to take away Dad's company. Victoria flinched as if struck. For a moment, her careful mask slipped completely, revealing something raw and painful underneath. Is that what you think, she whispered, that I don't want you to be yourself? I think, Tommy said carefully, that you want me to be perfect. But Miss Sarah and Dad, they just want me to be happy. The court clerk appeared, announcing the recess was over, but as they walked back into the courtroom, Sarah noticed something had shifted in Victoria's posture. The judge cleared his throat. Before I render my decision, does either party wish to make any final statements? Victoria stood suddenly. Yes, Your Honor, She paused, seeming to struggle with herself. I wish to withdraw my petition. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Her lawyer looked stunned. Mrs. Harrison, the judge peered at her. Are you certain? Victoria looked at Tommy, then at Sarah, and finally at Alexander. Yes, I've been fighting the wrong battle. My son needs both his parents and, she took a deep breath, perhaps he needs Sarah too. The judge nodded thoughtfully. Petition withdrawn. Court adjourned. As people began filing out, Victoria approached Sarah. This doesn't mean I like you, she said quietly. But Tommy, he sees something in you that I've been too angry to acknowledge. Don't make me regret this. She walked away before Sarah could respond, leaving behind the subtle scent of expensive perfume and the lingering weight of unspoken truths. The weeks following the custody hearing brought changes no one had expected. The foundation's work continued to expand, but the atmosphere had shifted. Victoria's withdrawal of her petition had created ripples throughout their interconnected worlds. Sarah sat in her office, reviewing proposals for a new initiative when Rebecca appeared with an unusual announcement. Mrs. Harrison is here to see you. Victoria entered before Sarah could respond, as elegant as ever, but somehow different. The sharp edges of her presence had softened slightly. We need to talk, Victoria said, settling into a chair without waiting for an invitation. About Tommy's winter break. Sarah tensed, preparing for another battle, but Victoria's next words surprised her. He wants to visit the new planetarium exhibit. Something about Mars colonies. Victoria's fingers traced the edge of Sarah's desk. I thought, perhaps we could all go. Together. All of us? Sarah couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. Yes. Well, Victoria straightened her already. Perfect posture. Tommy seems to think you'll understand the scientific aspects better than I would, and he's probably right. The admission clearly cost her, but there was something else in her voice, a tentative reaching toward understanding. I won't pretend this is easy for me, Victoria continued, but Tommy, he's happier than I've seen him in years, more confident. Even his teachers have noticed. Sarah thought carefully before responding. Victoria, I never intended to replace you. Tommy needs his mother. I know that now. Victoria's smile was small but genuine. I spent so much time trying to shape him into what I thought he should be, I forgot to see who he already was. Their conversation was interrupted by Tommy himself, bursting into the office with Alexander close behind. Miss Sarah, Dad says, we can use the foundation to help my school start a science club. He stopped short, seeing his mother. Mom, what are you doing here? Victoria stood gracefully. Actually, I was just inviting Miss Sarah to join us at the planetarium next week. The new Mars exhibit opens on Thursday. Tommy's face lit up with pure joy. Really? All of us together? The adults exchanged glances, years of tension and misconceptions beginning to thaw in the warmth of a child's happiness. Later that evening, Sarah and Alexander walked through Central Park, enjoying a rare moment of quiet. I never expected Victoria to change like this, Sarah admitted. Alexander smiled. People can surprise you. Sometimes they just need to remember what really matters. They stopped at their usual ice cream cart, now decorated for the holiday season. The vendor, who had watched their story unfold over many visits, gave them a knowing smile. The usual? He asked. Actually, Alexander said, make it 4. Victoria and Tommy are meeting us here. As they waited, Alexander turned to Sarah. You know, we still haven't talked about what Tommy said, about us. Sarah watched the sunset paint the city in shades of gold. Do we need to? Some things don't need words. Maybe not, he agreed, but sometimes saying them matters. He took her hand, his touch warm despite the winter chill. I love you, Sarah Martinez. Not because of the foundation, or even because of how wonderful you are with Tommy, but because you reminded me of who I used to be and helped me become who I want to be. Sarah's response was interrupted by Tommy's excited voice. Dad! Miss Sarah, we found parking. Victoria approached more slowly, taking in their joined hands with a raised eyebrow but saying nothing. They settled on nearby benches, Tommy chattering excitedly about the planetarium exhibit while carefully balancing his ice cream. Victoria, despite her designer outfit, managed to eat her cone with surprising grace. You know, she said quietly to Sarah, I always wondered what was so special about this place. Now I think I understand. Sarah watched Tommy demonstrate orbital patterns with his cone, making his father laugh. It's not about the ice cream. No, Victoria agreed. It's about being real. Something I forgot how to be somewhere along the way. The evening air grew cooler, but none of them moved to leave. They sat together, this unlikely family, as the first stars began to appear above the city lights. Tommy pointed excitedly. Look, you can see Mars. And there it was, a reddish point of light in the darkening sky, watching over 4 people who had learned that sometimes the greatest journeys aren't about distance, but about finding your way back to what matters most. Miss Sarah? Tommy's voice was thoughtful. Does this mean you're going to be part of our family now? The adults exchanged glances, each remembering the long path that had led them here. Victoria surprised them all by answering first. I think, sweetheart, she already is, just in a different way than we expected. The words hung in the air like a promise, a new chapter beginning as the old wounds finally began to heal. The planetarium's grand opening drew a crowd that bridged worlds. Children from the Foundation's programs mingled with society's elite, their shared excitement about space exploration erasing social boundaries. Sarah watched from the sidelines as Tommy led a group of kids through an interactive Mars colony. For display, he's quite the teacher. Claire Chen appeared beside her, champagne flute in hand. Who would have thought our little drama would end like this? Sarah smiled, remembering the tensions and battles of months past. Sometimes the best endings are the ones we don't expect. The Foundation had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Victoria, channeling her social influence in a new direction, had become an unexpected ally, opening doors to resources and supporters they never could have reached otherwise. Even Marcus Chen had come around, his marketing expertise now genuinely focused on expanding their impact rather than just maintaining appearances. "Miss Sarah," Tommy called from the display, "can you help explain about the polar ice caps?" As Sarah moved to join him, she caught sight of Alexander watching them, his expression soft. Victoria stood nearby, engaged in conversation with potential donors, but there was no tension in her posture now. "The ice caps are crucial for future colonization," Tommy explained to his rapt audience. "Just like how the Foundation helps kids, now so they can have better futures." One of the children, a girl from their newest school program, raised her hand. "But isn't Mars really far away? How do we know we can really help people there?" "That's a great question," Sarah knelt beside them. "Sometimes the most important journeys seem impossible at first, but if we work together, believe in each other, we can do anything," Tommy finished. "Like how you and Dad and Mom learned to work together, right?" The adults within earshot chuckled, but there was truth in his observation. Their journey had been about more than the Foundation or even their personal relationships. It had been about learning to see beyond surface differences to the possibilities beneath. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Sarah found herself back in the main planetarium chamber. The artificial sky above swirled with stars and planets, creating a peaceful counterpoint to the busy day. "Quite a success," Alexander's voice echoed slightly in the dome. "Though I think the real success isn't about the planetarium at all." Sarah turned to find him and Tommy approaching, Victoria following at a more measured pace. "The Foundation's results have exceeded all projections," Victoria added, her business acumen showing through. "But more importantly, the children are truly benefiting. I can admit when I was wrong about something." Tommy beamed at his mother's words, then tugged at Sarah's hand. "Can we show them our surprise now?" Sarah nodded, and Tommy ran to the control panel, where the planetarium director waited. The lights dimmed, and a new presentation began, a collaboration between the Foundation's children and professional astronomers, showing their dreams for the future through the lens of space exploration. As images of hope and possibility filled the dome, Sarah felt Alexander's hand find hers in the darkness. Victoria, seeing the gesture, gave a small nod of acceptance. "You know," Tommy whispered, "Mars has 2 moons. Maybe that means it's okay to have 2 different kinds of families too." The wisdom in his words struck them all silent. They had become something new, not a traditional family, but a constellation of caring adults orbiting around a child's well-being, each playing their own crucial role. "Speaking of families," Victoria said carefully, "the Foundation's Family Day is next weekend. I thought perhaps I could help organize it." The offer represented more than event planning. It was an olive branch, a step toward true collaboration. "We'd like that," Sarah replied, squeezing Alexander's hand. "All of us would." Above them, Mars glowed red against the planetarium's starry backdrop, a reminder of how far they'd come and how far they could still go. Tommy's voice filled the quiet as he explained constellations to younger children, his confidence and compassion growing stronger every day. Sarah thought back to that first ice cream cone, to the lonely little boy who just wanted someone to see him. She never could have imagined where that simple act of kindness would lead, to a transformed foundation, a healed family, and a love that had grown naturally and unstoppably, like plants reaching toward sunlight. "Sometimes," Alexander murmured, watching his son, "the best things in life start with ice cream." Victoria rolled her eyes, but her smile was genuine. Sometimes, she agreed, they start with learning to see what's really important. As the presentation ended and the lights slowly rose, they remained together, this unlikely family that had found its own unique balance. The Foundation's work would continue to grow, touching more lives and creating more possibilities. But perhaps their greatest achievement wasn't in the programs they'd created or the children they'd helped. It was in proving that love, in all its forms, could bridge any distance, heal any wound, and create something beautiful from life's most unexpected moments. Spring bloomed across New York City, bringing with it a season of change. The Harrison Foundation's first annual Science and Space Fair transformed Central Park into a wonderland of discovery. Children from all their program schools presented projects alongside professional scientists and astronauts, breaking down barriers between privilege and possibility. Sarah watched from the main stage as Tommy made final adjustments to his presentation booth. His project had grown from a simple Mars display into a comprehensive proposal for using space research to solve Earth-bound problems. "He's really something special," Lisa said, appearing beside her sister with 2 cups of coffee. "Though I suspect that has a lot to do with you." "It has to do with all of us," Sarah corrected, accepting the coffee gratefully. Victoria's connections brought in actual NASA scientists. Alexander's business sense helped make it sustainable. Even Marcus Chen's marketing made it accessible to more people. "And you," Lisa nudged her, "brought the heart." The fair was already filling with families despite the early hour. Sarah spotted Claire Chen leading a group of hospital board members through the exhibits, while her brother, now a successful restaurant manager, supervised a line of food trucks offering healthy, affordable options. "And Miss Sarah," Tommy called, waving excitedly, "the astronaut wants to see my project." Sarah made her way through the crowd, noting how naturally the children from different backgrounds interacted. A girl from their newest school program was explaining her solar power project to a boy from Tommy's private school, their shared enthusiasm transcending social boundaries. "Impressive work, young man," the astronaut was saying to Tommy. "Have you considered the applications for vertical farming?" "Actually," Tommy beamed, "that's part of my next project. Miss Sarah helped me connect with urban farming initiatives in our foundation schools." Victoria appeared, looking elegantly casual in designer gardening clothes. She had surprised everyone by taking charge of the fair's sustainable garden display. "Tommy, darling, your father's about to make the opening speech. Shall we?" The main stage filled as Alexander stepped up to the microphone. Sarah felt a familiar warmth as he found her eyes in the crowd, his smile soft with private meaning. "1 year ago," he began, "the Harrison Foundation was just another corporate philanthropy project. Today, thanks to one person's simple act of kindness, it's become something extraordinary." He gestured to the fair around them. "Look at what we've created together, not just programs or projects, but bridges, between privilege and need, between ambition and compassion, between dreams and reality." Victoria, standing near the stage, gave a small nod of agreement, perhaps her most sincere gesture yet. "But this is just the beginning," Alexander continued. "Today, I'm proud to announce the Harrison Foundation's newest initiative, the Future Builders Program. Through partnerships with NASA, leading universities and community organizations, we'll be creating pathways for underprivileged students to pursue careers in science and space exploration." The crowd erupted in applause. Tommy bounced excitedly, already imagining the possibilities. "And to lead this initiative," Alexander's voice softened slightly, "we've created a new position, Executive Director of Special Projects." "Sarah?" She felt all eyes turn to her as Alexander extended his hand. "Would you do us the honor?" Sarah climbed the steps, her heart racing. This wasn't just a job offer, it was an acknowledgement of how far they'd all come. As she reached for the microphone, she caught sight of Victoria's expression. Not jealousy or resentment, but something like respect. "Thank you," Sarah began, "but this honor belongs to all of us, to every child who dared to dream bigger, to every parent who sacrificed for their children's future, to every person who chose to see beyond surface differences to the potential beneath." She looked at Tommy, then at Victoria and Alexander. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come from the simplest beginnings, like an ice cream cone shared with a lonely child, or a family that found its own unique way to grow. The rest of the day passed in a blur of excitement and possibility. Children led tours of their projects, explaining complex scientific concepts with contagious enthusiasm. Parents from different worlds found common ground in their children's achievements. Even Marcus Chen was seen genuinely enjoying a food truck, hot dog, while discussing social media strategies with Lisa. As evening approached and the crowd thinned, Sarah found herself back at Tommy's booth. He was explaining his Mars colony designed to a group of younger children, his face alight with passion and purpose. "He's going to change the world someday," Alexander said softly, joining her. "Thanks to you." "Thanks to us," she corrected. "All of us." Victoria approached, carrying Tommy's space jacket. The evening program's about to start. They're setting up the telescopes. Under the darkening sky, families gathered on blankets as astronomers helped them locate constellations and planets. Tommy moved between groups, sharing his knowledge with infectious excitement. "You know," Victoria said quietly, "I always wanted Tommy to have the perfect life. I just didn't understand what perfect meant until now." Sarah watched as Tommy pointed out Mars to a group of mesmerized children, his father's arm around his shoulders, his mother nearby, wearing an expression of genuine pride. Perfect, she realized, wasn't about status or appearances. It was about finding your place in the constellation of people who loved you, each star shining in its own unique way. The evening of the science fair culminated in an unexpected gathering at the old ice cream parlor. The vinyl booths were filled to capacity as children from the fair and their families crowded in, the usual quiet of the shop transformed by excited chatter about planets and possibilities. The owner, Mr. Giuseppe, moved between tables with a bewildered smile, serving up sundaes to NASA scientists and corporate executives alongside his regular customers. Victoria Harrison, still in her gardening clothes, sat in a corner booth sharing ice cream with a group of girls from the Foundation's newest school program. "Did you see?" Tommy rushed up to Sarah's table, where she sat with Alexander and Lisa. "Dr. Rodriguez from NASA said my vertical farming design could actually work on Mars." "We all saw, buddy," Alexander grinned. "You were incredible today." Lisa watched the scene with amusement. "You know, when you bought that first ice cream cone, I bet you never imagined it would lead to all this." Sarah looked around the parlor, taking in the unlikely mixing of worlds. Claire Chen was teaching her brother's children about constellations using sprinkles on their sundaes. Marcus Chen, his usual corporate Polish softened by the casual atmosphere, was genuinely laughing at something Tommy's science teacher had said. "Sometimes the smallest gestures have the biggest impact," she mused. "Speaking of impacts," Alexander said softly, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you." The parlor suddenly grew quiet. Sarah turned to find everyone watching them, knowing smiles on their faces. Even Victoria had paused in her conversation, her expression unreadable. "Sarah Martinez," Alexander began, reaching into his pocket, "you've transformed not just the Foundation, but all of us. You showed me how to be a better father, a better leader, a better man." Tommy appeared at his father's side, practically vibrating with excitement. Victoria moved closer, her presence no longer threatening but supportive. "We've become something unique," Alexander continued. "Not a traditional family, but a constellation of people who care about each other. And I was hoping—" He produced a small box. "You'd make it official." Inside was a ring unlike anything Sarah had expected. Instead of a traditional diamond, it held a beautiful arrangement of stones in deep reds and blues, forming a subtle pattern of stars. The red ones are garnets, Tommy burst out, unable to contain himself. "Like Mars, and the blue ones are sapphires like Earth. I helped pick them." "We all did," Victoria added quietly. "It seemed fitting." Sarah looked at the ring, then at the faces around her. Alexander's hopeful smile, Tommy's barely contained. Joy, Victoria's genuine acceptance, Lisa's tears of happiness, and all the others who had become part of their extended family. "Yes," she said simply. Yes to all of it. The parlor erupted in cheers. Mr. Giuseppe appeared with a massive sundae decorated to look like the solar system on the house. As everyone celebrated, Sarah felt Tommy's arms wrap around her waist. "Now you're really going to be part of our family," he said, "even though you already were." Victoria approached, her expression soft. "He's right, you know. You've been family since that first ice cream cone. We just didn't know it yet." Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, Sarah found herself outside the parlor with Alexander. The spring night was warm, and above them, despite the city lights, Mars glowed faintly red against the dark sky. "Ready for our next adventure?" he asked, squeezing her hand. Sarah watched through the window as Tommy excitedly explained the ring's astronomical significance to anyone who would listen. Victoria was helping Mr. Giuseppe clean up, looking more relaxed than Sarah had ever seen her. Lisa was exchanging numbers with Claire, planning future collaborations. "You know," Sarah said, "I think this adventure has been about more than just us. It's about all of them too, about showing that love doesn't have to fit a traditional mold to be real." "Like Mars colonies," Alexander smiled, "creating something new in unexpected places." Inside, Tommy was now drawing diagrams of constellations on napkins, surrounded by an attentive audience of children and adults from all walks of life. The Foundation's work had bridged worlds in ways none of them had imagined possible. "Miss Sarah, Dad," Tommy called through the window, "come back in. I'm explaining about the next science fair." They rejoined their unconventional family, this constellation of hearts bound together by something stronger than tradition or expectation. As Sarah settled into the booth, Tommy on one side and Alexander on the other, Victoria sharing ice cream and ideas across the table, she realized that sometimes the greatest journeys weren't about distance at all. They were about finding your way home, even if home looked nothing like what you'd expected. And sometimes, just sometimes, it all started with a simple ice cream cone and a child's smile.